What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Haley and this is the next episode of my Wedding Wednesday series. So if you are new around here, if you haven't seen any of these videos, every Wednesday I am sharing something about wedding planning. I am getting married in July of 2022. I got engaged back in November of 2020. I will link that video here because it was a really cute surprise proposal, so props to my fiance. But my friend Megan Lindsay here on YouTube is getting married this coming July, and we decided to collaborate and share wedding planning tips, information about our wedding, where, what we're doing to plan, all that type of stuff every Wednesday. So each Wednesday we have a different topic and we both share about what we have planned, tips, all of that. So I'll have Megan's video linked down in the description box below, so be sure to go check that out when you're done watching this video. And today's topic is photographers and picking your photographer. I am specifically going to be sharing 20 questions that you should be asking potential wedding photographers. So just a little disclaimer, this is coming from me, who is not a wedding photographer, who knows nothing about photographing weddings, and this is like questions that I personally have to ask photographers, like knowing nothing about wedding photographers, very little about weddings in general. So some of this might be like, duh, you should ask this, or like the photographer is going to tell you when you first talk to them. But I decided to just share because these were all questions that I had written down when talking to photographers. So last week we actually talked to a couple of photographers and ended up booking with one of them, and we're really excited to work with her. But we asked all of the photographers these questions. The way that we found the photographers that we talked to were, first we looked at the list of recommended photographers that our venue gave us, and then we actually looked through, I say we, my mom did this, so props to my mom for going through and doing this. So she went through the venue's website and looked at all the photos and listed down the ones that were done by people who were not on the venue's recommended list. And so we had about, I think, 10 photographers that we went through, and we looked at their websites and their like Instagram pages and social media and stuff, and from there we narrowed it down to, I believe, 5 that I really liked. I liked their style, I liked their vibe, and those 5 I sent emails to, and we actually ended up setting up calls with 3 of them and talking to them, and from there we decided on going with one of them. So we got lucky that we found the one that we wanted to go with relatively easily. But I'm going to share with you guys now the 20 most important questions to ask when you're talking to these potential wedding photographers. So the first question is, how long have they been in the business? I feel like this is probably something they're going to tell you anyway, but just in case you want to know like how long they've been photographing, and especially photographing weddings, because I feel like weddings are very like specific. There's a lot of specific shots and different things like that. So you want to know, have they photographed a lot of weddings? How long have they been in the business? Question number 2 is, have they shot weddings at your ceremony site and or reception? For me, our venue is the ceremony and reception all in one place, but one of the most important things for me was wanting to find a photographer that has shot weddings at my venue before, specifically because my venue is an outdoor venue. It is kind of like a lot of greenery. There's a lot of different places you could shoot photos, and it just is like a little more unique than like a ballroom or something like that. So I wanted to find a photographer that has shot there before, so that they would kind of know like an idea of where good photo spots are, working with like the outdoors and all the greenery as well. So that's an important question as well. Question number 3 is, do they have a second photographer? Now, this might not be as important to you. To me, photos are like one of the most important things that I want like going into my wedding. So I wanted to make sure that my photographer would have a second professional photographer, not just like an assistant or somebody that's there with them, but an actual professional photographer, so that that person can be taking photos from different angles, or going and photographing the men while they're getting ready, while the main photographer is with you and your bridesmaids while you guys are getting ready. And just in general, like different angles at the ceremony, or somebody, the second photographer could be taking photos of like the details while the main photographer is taking photos of the reception, like happenings. That's a weird word. But yeah, this might not be as important to you, but for me, this was something that I definitely wanted to ask about, and specifically ask them, is it a second professional photographer, somebody that has experience and that, you know, will know what they're doing. Okay, question number 4 is, what would be your backup plan if for some reason you got sick or something happened and you could not photograph my wedding? Like, what is the backup plan? Do you have like a professional photographer that you know that would cover for you, or a couple of professional photographers that you know that could cover for you in case like they're busy, especially if you're getting married in a typical wedding season, which I am. I'm getting married in the summertime, so lots of weddings going on. So do they have a backup plan in case for some reason they were unable to shoot on your wedding day? What is their backup plan? Going off of that, question number 5, what is their refund or cancellation policy? If something crazy were to happen, like a global what would be like, what's the cancellation? If you have to move your wedding, if you have to cancel your wedding, do you get like your deposit back? If you have to move your wedding date and they can't do that new date, what like can you get a refund? And this is specifically related to the acts of God that a lot of people put into their contract. So it probably will be in your photographer's contract, but this is probably something you want to ask them, especially because of everything that happened in 2020. You just never know. So it's not a bad thing to ask like what their refund or cancellation policy would be, or if you had to move your date to the future, how would that work? Okay, question number 6 is, what type of editing do you do? Now, you should already have a sense of this because I highly recommend looking on their website, at their galleries, and as well as like on their social media platforms before you talk with them, so you can kind of get a sense. What I've noticed is that each photographer kind of has like a vibe, an aesthetic that all of their photos are the same, but it's nice to ask them, what type of editing do you do? If I have like a giant pimple on my chin on my wedding day, will you help me by editing that out? Like, what do you typically do? How much color saturation, how much like lighting and stuff do you edit in afterwards? And you just want to make sure that it matches your vibe and your aesthetic and what you're going to want to have in your wedding photos for the rest of your life. And that is kind of like the way that I narrowed down my photographers before deciding who I wanted to actually talk to, was looking at their aesthetic. Some just didn't match my vibes or what I wanted my wedding photos to look like. And so that was kind of like the first pass of how I narrowed down to the 5 photographers I actually contacted. Question number 7 is, how long does it take to get all of my photos, and would it be possible to get a few photos the day after, 2 days after the wedding? For me, I am big on social media. I love posting, and I don't want the first photo from my wedding to post to be like an iPhone photo that a friend took. I want it to be one of the photos from my professional photographer. So just asking them if they are able to get you like just 1 or 2 photos the next day or within 2 days, so that you can post something right afterwards, if that is something that matters to you. If not, then ignore that part and just ask them, you know, just to get a sense of how long it'll take to get all of the photos. Typically what I found, it was anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks. And you know, that's totally fine because they are literally editing like 1,000 photos and making sure they all look good. So you just want to ask them and make sure they kind of have a general timeline that they give you. Question number 8, this goes into the packages that they offer. What type of digital versus physical prints do they offer? So digital prints obviously are what most people want. What quality are they? Are they going to be web quality? Are they going to be high resolution? Where on the scale will they be with that? And then physical prints, what type of physical prints do they offer? Do they offer like a nice photo book? Do they offer wall prints blown up to big sizes and stuff like that? Or do they offer you the like digital copy of a high resolution image so that you can go and print it somewhere else and blow it up, and how much would that cost? So you just want to kind of get a sense of what their packages are, what they offer in each of those packages, and what is physical versus digital. Okay, question number 9, and this is one that is kind of like particular to people who are on YouTube or social media or an influencer where you're going to be posting these photos and potentially making ad revenue off of them, is can we work together to build in a commercial license into the contract? So typically what photographers give you in their contract is personal license. So you can post it on all your social media channels, you know, for personal use with no logo or watermark or anything. But if you're, say, going to put that photo into a YouTube video, and that YouTube video has ads on it where you make ad revenue, you need a commercial license for that. Otherwise, the photographer in the future could come back to you and say, hey, I get some of that revenue, because you don't have commercial rights to that actual image. So again, this is only important if you are going to be doing something like that, but for me this was extremely important because I wanted to be able to include my photos in future YouTube videos and not worry about if I make ad revenue off of that video, what would happen. There's also kind of like different levels. So for me, I just needed that. I don't need rights to like resell the images or anything, but that's another thing to think about. If you are gonna like put the photo on a t-shirt, that would be another step up of a commercial license. So just think about that if you are an influencer or somebody who's posting on social media and making money off of those posts. Do you want to get that commercial license built into your contract or not? Question number 10, have they worked with a videographer? So if you're not going to have a videographer at your wedding, then this is irrelevant. But if you are going to have a videographer at your wedding, you want to ask them if they've worked with videographers before. Obviously, the photographer kind of keeps the timeline going and takes all of the photos, but the videographer is also going to be right there with the photographer. So you want to ask if they have experience working with videographers and, you know, are willing to like work with them so that there's no clashing between the two on the day of. And you can also ask them if they have recommended videographers that they've worked with that they would like to work with again, or that they liked working with and produced good work. That way, you know, if they've worked together before, you can kind of like be comfortable in the fact that they will be able to mesh well and work well together. Okay, question number 11 is how much of a plan do they make before the wedding? So asking them, do they kind of have a plan? I think this is pretty standard and most photographers do this, but it's good to get a sense of what their planning and organization is like. I'm an extremely detail-oriented and like person that is like major planner. So I needed my photographer to be somebody who was like that as well, was willing to create that plan, create that timeline beforehand. And, you know, like I said, most photographers I think will do this, but it's good to just talk to them about it and talk to them about, you know, what they kind of prepare ahead of time, especially if you're someone like me that's a major planner, because you don't want your photographer to like not be doing that if that's something that you really want, or vice versa. Okay, question number 12 is, do they do engagement sessions, and is that included in the package? If not, how much is it? All of that stuff. So typically what I've noticed is a lot of the photographers that I looked at include engagement sessions in their package, or they do engagement sessions. And I think that it would be really good to have your wedding photographer do your engagement session, because it's kind of like a practice session for the wedding, especially for your fiance. If your fiance is a male, they might not be the best at taking photos. So a little practice session at the engagement session would be very good. So just asking them that and what the prices for that are so that you can kind of get a sense. Question number 13 is, how many hours do they typically shoot for a wedding, and how much does it cost for additional hours? So for me, like I said, photos are very, very important to me. So I want to have my photographer there for quite a while. So I like asking them kind of like, how many hours do you typically shoot, so you can get a sense of like what they typically do, and then what's the cost to add on more hours to the package. So I noticed a lot of wedding photographers that I looked at had like a 6-hour package and an 8-hour package, and then you could add on hours. So just kind of getting a sense of what that price would be, the additional price for the extra hours, and also just like in general, what do they typically shoot and how much do they think they can get done in that typical time, so you can kind of get a sense of what you want to do for your wedding. Okay, and going off of that, question number 14, and this is actually a question that Rob came up with when we were talking to one of the photographers, but can you add on an extra hour at the end of the night? So say like your hours are almost up for the day, but you guys, you know, you and your friends and family are still wanting to take photos. You're not just kind of like dancing. You know, you can only get so many photos of people dancing, but if you're still taking photos with people and all of that and want your photographer to be there, can you add on that extra hour at the end of the night? Or is it like, all right, my hours are done, I'm leaving? Question number 15. If you have anything specific that is in your wedding that's a little bit different or out of the ordinary, you want to ask them if they are comfortable shooting with that, if they have experience shooting with that, and if, you know, they would feel comfortable doing that on your wedding day. So for us, that is our dog. Our dog Mackie is going to be in our wedding, in our engagement session, there all day. So I wanted to make sure that the photographer we were working with was comfortable with dogs, has shot with dogs before, and would be willing to shoot with our dog at our wedding day, because he's a big part of it. bit, and you don't want somebody that is maybe a little timid around dogs if you have a dog in your wedding, because that'll just, make things a lot more complicated. Okay, question number 16, and again, this is specific to what your preferences are, but you want to ask them if they are planning to take photos of the decor and, the dessert table and stuff like that. I think that is pretty standard, but it's just a good thing to ask, what do their detail photos look like if you haven't seen any in their galleries, because sometimes those aren't included in their galleries because it's not something that everybody wants, but kind of getting a sense of when will they do that, especially with the reception, will they have time to do that, and all of that. Again, specific to your preference, but something to ask about. Question number 17, if you're gonna do a first look, you wanna ask them if they have shot first looks before. It is one moment you have, and I feel like a lot of wedding photographers have done it and feel comfortable doing it, but you have one moment to get that photo, and you want to just make sure that they have experience doing it, they're comfortable doing it, and you are going to get the best photos out of that. Number 18, going off of if you are doing a first look, are they happy to do as many photos as possible before the ceremony? For me, because photos are so important, I want to get as many done before the ceremony so that after the ceremony, I can just relax and maybe even make it to some of the cocktail hour. So that was something that I wanted to ask my photographer, are you comfortable getting as many photos as possible done before the ceremony, or do you kind of like pushing them out? Especially family photos, all your family members might not be there before the ceremony, but if you want to have some of your extended family come early so you can take photos, is your photographer comfortable with that? Will they be able to get all those photos? Number 19, if you have an outdoor wedding or a wedding in a place where the lighting's a little bit different or something like that, just mentioning that to them and asking them their experience with that. My venue, like I mentioned, has a lot of greenery, and I feel like that can really affect photos and lighting and stuff like that. So just asking your photographer if they've worked with that, and maybe some things that they do differently in that specific scene that you might not do somewhere else. And that kind of goes off if they shot at your venue before. If they have, then you know that they're comfortable doing that, but asking them for the gallery of that specific wedding would also be nice, just so you can get a sense of what they've done before at your specific venue or at a venue like yours. And number 20, this isn't a question specifically for the photographer, but is more a question for you to be thinking about when you're talking to them. Do you like their vibe? Your photographer is one, going to be kind of running the whole day and making sure everything stays on track. And two, they're going to be capturing very special, intimate moments, and you want to feel comfortable with them, because if you don't, those moments won't be real and raw, and you want to make sure that you feel comfortable enough with them that you'll be able to just be in the moment and not worried about what the photographer is doing or the fact that there's even a photographer there. So just be thinking about that. Do you like their vibe? On top of, do you like their photos and their aesthetic, but just the vibe of their personality? Do you think that you guys would get along well? Do you think that you guys would go to a bar and get a drink? Do you feel like you guys fit together? So that is 20 questions to ask a photographer when you are looking for a wedding photographer. I hope that this was helpful. If it was, let me know down in the comments below, or if you have other tips, let me know those in the comments below as well. Leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed, and don't forget to subscribe to join our YouTube family. We would love to have you. We're sharing all types of awesome wedding planning content, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. Don't forget to check out Megan's video. It will be linked in my description box below. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.